What if I told you that one train, just steel rails, steam engines, and cargo cars terrified the most powerful empire on Earth? Not an army, not a revolution, not a weapon, a train. At the height of its power, when the British Empire controlled the seas, global finance, and the flow of trade, it faced a threat that didn't fire a single shot. A railway project stretching across continents had the potential to redraw maps, shift alliances, and quietly end British dominance. Britain didn't just oppose it. Britain reshaped global politics to stop it. Wars were influenced, regions destabilized, borders redrawn, empires collapsed, and the world we live in today still carries the scars. But what was this train? Why was it so dangerous? And how could steel tracks threaten an empire built on ships, banks, and colonial power? To answer that, we have to go back to the age when railways were not just transportation but weapons. By the late 1800s, the British Empire was something unprecedented in human history. It didn't just control territory, it controlled movement. Britain ruled the oceans, its navy was unmatched, its merchant fleets connected continents, its banks financed governments, its insurance companies decided which risks were acceptable and which were impossible. This created a simple but powerful formula. Sea power controlled trade, trade controlled wealth, wealth controlled politics. If you wanted to move goods from Asia to Europe, you needed British shipping lanes. If you wanted insurance, you needed British underwriters. If you wanted credit, you needed British banks. And above all, Britain controlled the world's choke points. The Suez Canal key ports, maritime trade routes. This wasn't accidental, it was strategy. But there was one weakness in this system, one vulnerability Britain could never fully eliminate: land. In the late 19th century, railways were transforming empires. They unified nations, accelerated economies, and made centralized power possible. Germany, a newly unified industrial powerhouse, understood this well. So did the Ottoman Empire, a declining but strategically vital state that sat between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Together, they envisioned something revolutionary: a continuous railway linking Berlin to Baghdad. This railway would connect Europe directly to the Middle East, bypass British-controlled seas, reduce dependence on maritime trade, open access to oil-rich regions, strengthen Germany-Ottoman economic ties. This was not just infrastructure, it was geopolitical independence. For the first time, goods could move from Europe to the Persian Gulf without touching British ships, British ports, or British insurance. To Britain, this was unthinkable. At first glance, the Berlin-Baghdad Railway seemed like just another industrial project. But Britain saw what others didn't. This railway threatened four pillars of British power. 1. Naval supremacy. If trade moved over land, Britain's navy became less relevant. 2. Financial control. British banks thrived by financing maritime trade. A land route shifted capital flows away from London. 3. Colonial leverage. India, the crown jewel of the empire, was protected by naval dominance. A railway reaching the Persian Gulf could challenge that security. For energy security, oil was becoming the lifeblood of modern warfare and industry. Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, sat on vast untapped reserves. This wasn't competition. This was an existential threat. Britain didn't declare war over the railway. That would have been obvious. Instead, it used subtler tools it had perfected over centuries. Diplomatic pressure. Britain pressured the Ottoman Empire through loans, treaties, and political leverage. Financial warfare. British banks influenced investment flows, delayed funding, and raised risks around the project. Proxy conflicts. Regional instability mysteriously increased along the railway's path. Media narratives. British newspapers framed the railway as dangerous, destabilizing, and imperialistic, despite Britain ruling the largest empire on Earth. At every stage, the goal was the same: delay, disrupt, destabilize. But the railway continued. Tracks were laid, agreements signed, engineers hired, and as the train crept closer to completion, Britain realized something alarming. Stopping it would require more than diplomacy. By the early 20th century, Europe was already a powder keg. Nationalism was rising, alliances were rigid, arms races were accelerating. The Berlin-Baghdad Railway didn't cause World War I, but it shaped the conditions that made it inevitable. Britain feared a future where Germany had direct access to Middle Eastern oil. The Ottomans controlled a critical land bridge. British maritime dominance was neutralized. When war broke out in 1914, one of Britain's first strategic priorities was clear: ensure the railway never becomes operational. The Ottoman Empire joined the war on the side of Germany. Britain responded by targeting Ottoman territories, supporting revolts within the empire, seizing control of key regions near the railway. The war wasn't just fought in trenches, it was fought over routes. When World War I ended, the Berlin-Baghdad Railway lay incomplete, but the consequences were permanent. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. Britain and France carved the Middle East into new states, many with borders that made little sense on the ground but perfect sense strategically. Why? Because fragmented regions couldn't build independent infrastructure. They couldn't unite economically. They couldn't challenge global trade routes. Britain didn't just stop a train. It reshaped an entire region to ensure no similar project could ever threaten its power again. The railway was never completed as originally envisioned. The threat was neutralized, but the instability remained. After the war, Britain believed it had solved the problem. It controlled Middle Eastern oil, strategic ports, political leadership in key regions. But something unexpected happened. The very methods Britain used to stop the railway fragmentation, dependency, financial control, created long-term instability. Revolts, coups, resource conflicts, endless intervention. The system required constant maintenance. And eventually, it became too expensive to sustain. Britain won the battle over the train but lost the ability to control the consequences. Here's the shocking part. This story didn't end in 1918, the pattern continues. Today, global power still revolves around trade routes, energy corridors, infrastructure projects. Modern railways, pipelines, and shipping routes trigger the same fears once inspired by the Berlin-Baghdad Railway. When a new route bypasses existing power structures, pressure follows, sanctions appear, conflicts escalate, the technology changes, the strategy doesn't. Sea lanes become data cables. Railways become energy pipelines. Empires become institutions. But the logic remains identical. Control movement and you control the world. The most important lesson of this story is not about Britain. It's about power. Empires fear not armies but